If our soil is not productive, we can't make a living. So all these things contribute to the health of our environment.
Many traditional farming practices, like those used by my father and grandfather in Alabama, have allowed fertilizer, manure, and topsoil to wash into nearby creeks and ultimately into Tellico Lake. Because of these pollutants, along with other sources, the state of Tennessee has classified most creeks in our watershed as impaired waterways. To a lesser extent, these creeks have also had a negative effect on the water quality of the Tellico Lake. My name is Bill Waltrip. I chair the Water Quality Improvement Committee of the Watershed Association of Tellico Reservoir. Our mission is to protect and improve the water quality throughout the entire watershed of the Tellico Lake. I would like to introduce my friend Steve Harrison, who manages Harrison Dairy. Steve is on top of his game when it comes to modern farming practices. We will be describing some farming practices that are not only environmentally friendly, but improve the efficiency of farming operations.
I'm Steve Harrison. Along with my family, we own this farm, a dairy farm here in Loudoun, Monroe counties. I'm a seventh generation farmer in Tennessee. Our family's been on this particular farm where we are right now for about 120 years. We're looking at a field that's got a green cover crop on it. And this particular field has 5 different plants that were sown in the fall to grow through the fall, winter, and spring. And the reason we're doing this cover crop is the first thing is to protect the soil from erosion. Once there's something up and growing on the land, it helps protect erosion. When this green crops die and decay, they will break down and add organic matter to the soil. We're going to look at the 5 crops that are growing in here, 5 plants. We have a wheat crop. Most people are familiar with wheat. Wheat comes up in the fall, established pretty quick, matures out in the spring, gives us ground cover pretty quick, and a good bit of organic matter. This is a rye plant, which is similar to wheat, grows a little faster, stands the cold weather better, a little more vigorous, a little more organic matter. And then we have 2 legumes. We have crimson clover or red clover, and you see a lot of that there. It's a beautiful crop this time of year because it's making a head. This is a plant that will supply its own nitrogen. It also take nitrogen out of the air and put in the soil for the next crop or companion crops. So it is very beneficial to soil health. This that you also see growing there is a winter pea, similar to the peas you would grow in your garden, but it's more developed for a forage pea. This grows all through the winter. There again, it is a legume. Takes its own nitrogen out of the air, puts it in the soil, it uses that nitrogen. What nitrogen it doesn't use, it leaves in the soil. There's one other crop there that you cannot see, but is down in the ground. This is a tillage radish. And this is not all from the same plant, but it gives you an idea of what this plant does. This comes up and is very vigorous in the fall, and it penetrates down in the soil fairly deep. You can see how deep that is. That's 12 inches deep. So it loosens the soil and then puts a green top on. The greens on top are edible, and the radish down in the ground is edible. But what it does, it helps to loosen, it helps with the tilt of the soil, and then when it dies and decays, it helps with organic matter. So you can have a cover crop with 1 or 2 crops, or 4 or 5, or 8 or 10. The more different plants you have there, the more diversity you have, and each plant has its own strength. The bigger the combination, the better the cover crop. This particular crop, we are not going to harvest this crop for a forage crop. Now, we could do that. There's a lot of good quality feed here that we could harvest and feed to cows. We're going to sacrifice this crop. and we're going to till it into the soil, try to leave most of the organic matter, the dead fodder on top of the soil, and plant corn into this. And so we're going to use it to control erosion. We've kind of got a mulching effect. We've had these crops help with soil health through the winter. We've added nitrogen to the soil so we can use less nitrogen fertilizer, but we're going to sacrifice this crop hopefully to benefit the next crop. These kind of practices, growing these cover crops, sacrificing the crop sometimes, we're trying to build organic matter in the soil. And anytime we raise that organic matter, the soil is more efficient in getting nutrients to the plant. And also you can be more efficient with your input cost and lower cost. The higher the organic matter, the higher quality your soil is. It gives up the nutrients easier, it stores more nutrients. And another great benefit from raising organic matter in soil is water infiltration and water holding capacity. So all these kind of things are trying to help with the economy of growing this crop. Hopefully you can grow it cheaper and have a higher yield with less input cost and use less commercial fertilizer. And another big thing with the clovers, the legumes, if you're fixing nitrogen, that's just nitrogen fertilizer you don't have to purchase. Now we're at a different field, a different location, and this field is a little farther along as far as it's planted. If you notice, there's a little bit of corn peeping through the ground. This field was planted 10, 11, 12 days ago. We tilled, worked the ground a little bit, and sacrificed that cover crop. It was the same cover crop, the 5 different plants we looked at the field preceding this one. We have tilled it and tried to leave most of the fodder on top and then planted through the trash. That will help with erosion through the year. We've got nitrogen that's been fixed that will supply this corn crop or some of what the corn crop needs. Chances are, now this is not always true, if we plowed this ground with a moldboard plow and planted a crop of corn, chances are we'd have a better crop this year. Long term, we would not. So a lot of what we're doing is long-term soil health, controlling erosion, trying to do a better job of these cover crops so that long-term this land is sustainable and farmable in an economic manner. This is what you would call farming ugly. It's not real pretty, it's not real scenic, but hopefully we'll have a good crop. All right, we're looking at a third field. This field had the same crop growing in it as the first 2 fields: clover, winter peas, wheat, rye, and tillage radishes. We have chemically killed those crops and planted right through it. This is a picture of no-till cropping. So your erosion is very minimum. We got the benefit of protecting the soil through the winter with a cover crop. We've used the clovers, the legumes, the peas to fix nitrogen. And then we have this organic matter that's still on top of the ground, but will eventually work its way down in the soil and improve soil health. And this organic matter, dead fodder, dead forage, is kind of like a mulch. The corn will come up through that, and then we've got a mulch on top of the ground that will help hold moisture into the soil. This corn was planted about a week ago. And if you see the little skinny rows there, that's where the corn planter ran. So the corn planter planted right through this dead crop. And so in a few days, the corn will be coming up there. But this is a perfect example of no-till corn. We are not tilling the soil, but we're growing a crop of corn. With organic matter and fodder on top of the soil, mulch, you might say, it also helps with erosion during the season. Anytime you have a raindrop coming down and hitting naked soil, that's where erosion starts. If we can protect that soil from the raindrop, that's the first step in controlling erosion. But the more organic matter, the more crop residue we have on top of the soil, the better job we can do controlling erosion. In this field, we're looking at this no-till crop, but we are close to the creek. And we have a strip along the edge of our field here, 10 to 15 feet wide. It's a grass strip that we keep in permanent grass. Then we have a fence and then we have another grass strip going down to the creek. So combination there, we've got 50 or 60 feet of grassways between our crop field and the creek. This is Fort Creek flowing down through Monroe and Loudoun counties into the Tellico Lake. The grassed area along the creek is really a flood zone for a lot of it. So that creek occasionally floods, gets out of the banks, comes out into the grassed area, and we really don't want, if the creek's flooding, to be out in our crop field, because we don't want any erosion in that crop field. But if we've got a permanent grass strip there, it not only protects the creek from our cropping operation, but it also protects the soil from erosion from when the creek floods. All right, this field is another cover crop, but this is one plant growing in this cover crop. It is triticale. Triticale is a cross between wheat and rye, and it's a forage crop, and we're growing this to harvest for a forage crop to feed cows. And you can see how green and lush it is, how leafy it is. We will harvest this crop in a few weeks. There'll be a little short stubble left down there after we mow it off. We will plant right into that stubble. No working of the ground, but we're getting some of the benefits of a cover crop. Then we're having a crop to harvest, and then protecting the soil that will be able to no-till behind this cover crop. This field had liquid manure injected underneath the soil, down in the soil. The advantage of that is that you utilize and capture more nutrients out of the manure for your crop. You also have less smell if you put it down in the soil. The disadvantage to it is that you have to till the soil a little bit to get it leveled back up, smooth back out. It takes a little longer for it to dry to plant a crop, but this crop will excel, grow a great crop of corn. Also, we've got a grassed waterway down through the center of it. That's where we leave the vegetation growing down through the field. We'll have some water that could run down through there during the cropping season. And if we've got a grassed waterway, that will help control erosion there. On April 21st, we were in this same field at about the same spot, and we looked at a cover crop consisting of rye, wheat, crimson clover, a specialty type of tillage radish, and winter peas. Rather than harvesting this crop for animal feed, we sacrificed it. That is, we left it in the field so that the soil could capture its nutrients. We worked this cover crop down a little bit, and it's still here laying on the ground, and it helps protect the soil, conserve the runoff, conserve the nutrients, and conserve moisture. A week or two later, we planted this corn through that cover crop. This corn was planted somewhere around the end of April. Here we are today on the 15th of June, and you can see we've got a good corn crop thanks to some good rainfall this past week. There's very little chance of erosion on this ground with this cover crop. The corn is doing well, and with adequate rainfall, we will have a good crop here. We're growing this corn to feed our dairy cows. We harvest the whole plant as a forage crop. It will have the ear, the stalk, the leaves, and then we will make silage out of that, corn silage. And silage is just a product that's preserved by lowering the pH, just like you would make pickles. This feed is very nutritious for cows. Cows like it. It will store for a long period of time. We can do the same thing with the grass crops or the legume crops. We'll store it at the right moisture, make haylage out of that, and these cows will consume that corn, make milk and meat. They will also make manure. We'll take that manure, fertilizer, feed our corn again, and have a cycle of feed for cows, cows making milk, meat, and manure going back to the crops. All these cropping procedures we've looked at, these different kinds of cover crops, grassed waterways, buffer zones for the creek, all of them contribute to stream health. Our farming practices aren't perfect, but we try to keep water quality, stream health, erosion, all these things in mind when we're farming. And we have to take care of the soil, the water, because it's a natural resource that we depend on. If our soil is not productive, we can't make a living. So all these things contribute to the health of our environment.
The Watershed Association of the Tellico Reservoir is proud of our work to promote better farming practices that improve the water quality throughout the Tellico watershed. We especially appreciate forward-thinking farmers like Steve Harrison, who practice soil conservation and water quality protection, and for his time and cooperation in preparing this video.